And there's Jody. All right, so we're recording now. It's 6 o'clock. We'll get started. Thank you for being with me. Candace is going to be late. She can join us whenever. So first thing we do every week is we figure out where we are in the semester. All right, this is week 10, Tuesday, October 15th at 6 o'clock. We're having our first case study 1, and you should be working on discussion board activity 1. So let's look at discussion board activity 1. There we go. All right, locate copies of your school emergency crisis plans. How long did it take you to find it? According to what you read, is the plan appropriate? Locate a copy of your school budget. Does it contain federal, state, local, and school funds? What's missing? List the 5 most important steps in the school-based budgeting process. Conduct the facilities go-through using facilities assessment inventory found in the materials folder. How well did your school do? So I've seen a couple of these come back in. So here are kind of the takeaways from these things. In modern times, your emergency plan needs to be updated, and you need to make sure that you're doing your fire drills and that you're doing your lockdowns and your active shooter drills. You need to make sure that twice a month, the law says not only do you have to do a fire drill once a month, you have to do a safety inspection twice a month. And that's what that assessment inventory is. That's under 115C288. I've got that pulled up. Let's look at that. Conduct fire drills and inspect for fire hazards. People forget the inspect for fire hazards part, and that's the one that gets you when you get sued. When you have a fire, when you have an accident, when there's an emergency happens at your school, first thing they'll ask for is your fire drill report. The second thing they'll ask you for is your twice monthly safety inspection. And that's in everybody, you get the pregnant pause of the chronically stupid. What did you mean? Well, it says right here in the law that you'll have 1 fire drill each month. It also said that you will inspect each of the buildings at least twice a month. And that's what that assessment inventory is for. Now, your district may have a separate one from that. Most of them don't. But I would do those things hard copy, just like the fire drill report, and I would file those things away. Or maybe you could make you a Google Doc of it, but I would keep a record of those things. I have been the principal of a building that caught on fire. You want to make sure that all your T's are crossed and your I's are dotted. So again, that's what that assessment inventory is. I am amazed every semester how many schools that can't do the easy things, like update their safety plans, make sure that they're relevant, make sure that class rosters, that their data manager prints out new class rosters every Monday morning and sticks them and takes the old one out and put the new one in. Takes 3 minutes. That can't even do the simple things. And then when a crisis comes, well, it was unavoidable. No, it wasn't unavoidable. It was not unavoidable. And I'll pick on Erin for a minute here. Not saying that her folks did, but I'm going to use Fort Mill as an example. In places that are kind of hot and everybody wants to go to, we get this false sense of superiority. Not that they are, I'm just pointing it out that it could happen. That it'll be okay. They love us. If we make a mistake, it'll be okay in the end. It doesn't work that way when you go to court. Those places, for whatever reason, tend to be the places where parents are not happy or are difficult places. Folks know they're not going to get a pass there, and they tend to do a lot better. But the more elite type places have problems with this. That's just details. That's not important. Not till you go to court. You let some child get hurt, and then all of a sudden, it's not fun and games anymore. And you don't get that pass, that love, that you've been getting all along. You don't get that love when somebody gets hurt. And so those are the kinds of places that you really need to, everybody needs to be on their game here. These are important things that you need to do. Now, in terms of the budget, we know that there's federal, state, local, and then school raised money. They should all be represented in your budget, and that budget is a public document. Did any of you get any blowback on we don't make the budget? Have you gotten this notion we don't make the budget public? Have you heard any of that yet? I usually get one of those in every class every semester. Oh, we don't give that in. Yes, you do. Again, go back to the law, and this is the same in South Carolina.
I didn't get the blowback, but I did get the question of what you're looking for.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. To make available school budgets and school improvement plans. They are both public documents. Principal shall maintain a copy of the school's current budget and school improvement plan, including any amendments to the plan, and shall allow parents of children in the school and other interested persons to review and obtain such documents in accordance with Chapter 132 of the General Statutes. I'm amazed every year how many people, I don't know if we got that, or we don't give that out, or what you want to see, or what can I tell you? And one of the things that you need to be looking for in the budget, and that's why it's written in this paragraph here, is to make sure it's aligned with your school improvement plan. We've talked about this before. It's a triangle. Your master schedule and your budget has to support your school improvement plan. If you don't, you're just chasing your tail. That is the continuous improvement model. That data feeds itself. And one of the things that some folks are bereft to do is let people look and see if you're really putting your money where your mouth is. Do you really want to solve these problems? Are you really putting your resources behind? Are you really designing a master schedule that takes advantage of these things, or are you just telling that? So again, this is law. This is not best practices or suggestions. This is the law. All right. The 5 most important things in school funding, those are all debatable. I'm always just amazed at the idiocy of some of the things that I read, though. I hate to say it that way, but some folks don't get it. Usually it's not a good idea just to say, well, we looked at last year's budget. Nah. You need to look at your school improvement plan first. What are your needs? That's your needs assessment. Everybody needs to understand the school improvement plan is the needs assessment for the budget. This is what we need. This is what we need to do. And we need to do a lot. So that's the first thing. We look at school improvement plan, or we do a needs assessment. And they're the same thing. Where do we need to be spending our money? We don't just spend and look at last year and do because we always did it. If you do what you always did, you get what you always got. What's the definition of insanity? Do the same thing over and over again, expect a different result. And so we need to understand that we need to start with what are our priorities? What is our needs assessment? What does our school improvement plan say? That's where we need to start. Anything else, not a good idea. You won't get where you need to be. So those are the activities that we're doing this week. Next week, we're off because of fall break. Looking at that activity, interview an administrator concerning human resources practices. This should include position opening, job announcement, obtaining candidates, interviewing process, and hiring process. And also a secondary one should be about what employee assistance or what compensation, what benefits you have now. You need to be well versed in those because your faculty will have questions from time to time, but you at least need to know who you can direct somebody to if they've got questions about compensation, insurance, employee assistance for drug or alcohol abuse or domestic violence or what has your district got in place for those things? Now, the first one that's in the larger font there, what I really want you to do is track the whole thing. How do you know you've got a position open? Can you just say, I've got a position open and start advertising? I mean, how do you know you've got an open position? That's part of it. Who makes the job announcement? Who obtains the candidates? Who vets them? Who does the background check? Who calls and does the references? What is your interviewing process? Is it your school administrators? Is there a team? Do you work your way up to having personnel input in an empowerment model? Who calls and offers the job? Those kinds of things, you need to know how that works in the district where you become principal. You need, because it varies from every district. It varies from state to state. I've worked in districts where we had to do everything, to working in Charlotte where I didn't have to do anything except interview and pick the one I wanted. And then, but I didn't call them. I called back my analysts, and they all called and offered the job. If you're in a district that makes you check references, that's very time consuming. If you have to go through all that process, or is all that done before it gets to you? One of the things I loved about working in CMS is when they sent me candidates, they'd already been vetted, background check, fingerprinted. They had already, their references had been checked. Now, if I wanted to call some and talk to them myself, but they didn't send me anybody that wasn't employable. They didn't waste my time doing interviews with somebody who couldn't be, once we found out. And so I got a call, I think the year I retired, I got a call from a former, well, not a former, I guess you're fraternity brothers for life, and one of my fraternity brothers who's an attorney in the DC area. And he called me, he's from Maryland, he called me, and he said, my daughter graduated from UNC Charlotte, and she can't get through the process to get hired as a teacher. And she's a good girl and does really well. We can't figure out, we don't know what the problem is, why she can't get through the application process. She's not getting referred out to any schools for interviews. And I know y'all need teachers. I said, all right, hang on, let me check. I'll call you back. And so I had a sneaking suspicion, so I just went to a different floor in the building and went to our police department and said, pull me the background check on this person, and I'll check with, if this is not it, I'll check with HR, see what the problem is. But of course I knew it was. And so they pulled the background check and said she failed the background check. And so I called Eric back and I said, I don't understand. You told me that her record was clean and what a good girl she was. She was arrested for drug possession in college, resisting arrest, assault on public official. She's got four charges from 3 different incidents, all of them substance abuse or alcohol related from the time she's had a DUI. I said, she's not employable in our district. Oh, that was just all when she was young and in college. That stuff, that wasn't serious stuff. And I was like, yeah, it was. We're not going to send somebody out to a school that we can't hire. We can't be hiring people like this. She might be a wonderful young lady, but she's not going to get hired in Charlotte. You might be able to get a job in one of the lesser districts, or maybe get a job in a charter or a private school, and then hope to get here later on. But as a first job, no, we're not going to hire them, and we're not going to waste the principal's time doing that. That's the way that has to work. And so you need to know what the process is in your district, and if it's your responsibility, you better take it seriously. So that's the next of those. We'll meet again before we go any further. Our next activity then will be looking at your school intervention team, MTSS, RTI, all those things. And we'll talk about that more when we meet again in a couple of weeks. And so I do want to get to our case tonight. I don't want to spend all night on this. Anybody have any questions on our activities, why we're doing these, or any comment on them?
Can I ask one quick question? Because
Sure.
I'm running into one little problem. I don't have any budgets right now. Can I use last year's budgets?
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
It's not like we're going to ask for the money. I just need you to look at the a budget.
Okay.
And see the format. Yeah, I know the budget's not been passed. It's the process that I'm interested in, not the product. That'll be fine. All right. So we have our first case study, case study 1. Now, before you dive in and run yourself off the cliff, let me give you a little background on what law and policy is. And so you could have pulled these things together. I didn't direct you to them. Tonight's about, it's about the process again, not so much the product. So we've got a case of cheating here. Bobby cheated on a class assignment, turned in his brother's assignment. The teacher manipulated the grading scale to make that one class assignment worth more than half of the yearly grade. The policy in the district said that the child may receive a failing grade, not only for the year or the class, but on the assignment only. Who assigns the grades? Well, the law says the principal does. To grade and classify pupils. 115C 288, that's the principal's responsibility. So this case falls under the adage that your mother, when you were about 14 and you wanted to do something really dumb because one of your friends was doing it, and your mama said, if Wendy jumped off a cliff, would you jump off with her? This is one of those cases where if a teacher does something this egregious, would you support it? This is really bad. This is that notion of, do we support teachers blindly all the time? None of the time, some of the time? Does it matter what they did? We always support them publicly, and then privately we say something to them, or can we afford to do that if our duty is to uphold law and policy? Can we support them publicly and then have a stern talking to them privately, or do we have to act upon the information that we have? We understand that a class assignment, for the yearly total, a class assignment can't count more than 10%. State exams can't count more than 30. That's all in state board policy, both states. Classwork counts a certain amount, testing counts a certain amount. In either state, or in all districts in either state, class assignments, out of class assignments cannot count for more than 10% of the grade. This teacher has manipulated that to, it says, more than 50% of the grade. So what has happened, and I'm going to close this one, what has happened is, in effect, the teacher has issued a zero tolerance expulsion. Fail the kid for a year. How long does the kid have to sit out? How long before the kid can continue his educational career? 1 year, right? And even if we give him the opportunity for summer school, does that change the fact that it's a zero tolerance expulsion? No, it says so in the law right here. Even if you give them a redress like an alternative school or summer school, it doesn't matter. You put them out of school for a whole year. Is that allowable, or zero tolerance, which means no due process? Is that legal? That would be no, because it's capricious. The two standards in due process, other than substantive and procedural, what is the law and did you follow it? The standards for due process in terms of assigning consequences are arbitrary and capricious. Those are the two standards. That was in your reading in your book. What is arbitrary? Arbitrary is when Crystal and I got caught smoking out behind the gym, they told Crystal to go back to class, and they just shot me right there. I mean, that's arbitrary. I mean, that's they let her go and punished me. That would be arbitrary. That's illegal. Capricious is when you give more punishment than the law allows. The law said that you can only fail the kid on the assignment, can't fail him for the year. That's more punishment. Also, you manipulated the grading system. I'm quite certain that teacher didn't turn in a grading system that violated the district policy, which follows the state policy of 10% out of class assignments. I'm quite sure that teacher didn't tell you that as principal. And so that teacher manipulated the grading scale and issued a capricious punishment of failing the kid for the year. Made that one class assignment count more than 50%. Did it dawn on any of you that that seemed a little bit excessive? That a kid would cheat on a class assignment and would fail for the year or lose their educational privilege for a whole year over cheating on one class assignment? Does that sound excessive to any of you? And that's not a rhetorical question. I'm going to stop now. Did that ring any bells with anybody? All right.
Over here.
No,
All right,
you
all right.
got it.
Do what?
I was telling Crystal, congrats. We were waiting on you.
You knocked me offline when you came in.
Oh.
We're good. Let me I'm still recording. Probably be 2 different recordings. That'll be fine. All right. So here's the question. Did that ring a bell with anybody? Welcome, Candace. When you saw that the punishment for cheating on a class assignment was to fail for the entire year and have to repeat the entire year, did anybody say, whoa, that seems a little excessive?
I did.
I did as well.
I did too.
We had
This should have been the part about his relatives and the principle. All that was just to confuse you. This is a simple due process case, a really simple one, where a teacher, capriciously assigned a punishment that was way too much. What would you do?
have to have a conversation with the teacher and let them know that the consequence that they gave was not appropriate. No?
Yeah.
No, okay. You were shaking your head. No, I was thinking.
Yeah, that's not appropriate at all. I mean, but see, y'all are much nicer people than me. See, we'd have more than a conversation. Well, the first thing we do is we would rescind that. We would tell the teacher, you're going to have to calculate the grade. If you want to fail the student, the appropriate thing to do is allow the kid a makeup and give them reduced. But if you want to give them on a 0, is to recalculate the grade. That all of, I need to see your grade book. All of the class assignments, you can give him a 0 on this, but all of them together can't count more than 10%. Now what's his grade?
Mm-hmm.
That is the policy of the district. That follows state guidelines. Heck, you can't. Some districts don't only count state testing as 20%, but you can't by law count state testing more than 30%. And one class assignment, you're going to count it more than 50%. Now, this falls under the category of kids that need love the most deserve it the least. I'm sure Bobby's probably not your favorite. He's probably been giving you the business all year long. And his family probably makes you mad every time they come through, thinking that, they can have what they want when they want it. I'm not saying that Bobby is a deserving scholar here. I'm telling you, due process is about the law. It's not about who we like or dislike, or that's what I'm talking about. The arbitrary part, we love Crystal. We don't like Dale too much. So we let her go and punish me. It keeps us from doing things like that, or in cases like this, where we manipulate the system to give too much punishment. Now, I had to do a due process hearing at Providence High School. Been a long time ago. I went down to Providence to do this due process hearing, and the student was 18, and there was legal ramification because he brought a serious weapon to school. And he had an attorney that would look like just out of law school. I mean, you still had the scab on his booster shot, little milk mustache. But he looked just like, if you ever saw the movie Revenge of the Nerds, he looked just like Booger. That's exactly what he looked like. And he looked like he was about 12 years old. And he came in, and, I'm sitting there as legal counsel, and I'm telling him before we start, everything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to remain silent, not give us testimony against yourself. It's the school's burden to provide the proof against you. Okay. And then his attorney, okay. And his attorney let him testify. And I couldn't believe it. And I was like, I should slap this kid. Let him testify. And the young man,
I think we've been walked through it. Oh, he's back.
I'm back. I'm going to turn on an alternative internet source here and see if I can. So anyway, the story, I'll make the short story long as I normally do. The attorney let him testify and give evidence against himself, and he admitted what he did. And then during the closing argument, the young attorney said, the case needs to be, I'm asking the case to be dismissed forthwith because it's capricious. The school gave more punishment than the handbook allowed. And he pulled out the handbook that said that, the kid couldn't be given but a 5-day suspension. I said, your problem is you've got the elementary handbook. High school code of conduct that this student falls under. And then, of course, he wanted to strike his client's testimony, which you couldn't do. And those proceedings go to court with the student. It did not go well for that young attorney. And it didn't go well for the kid, who it shouldn't have gone well for him, because he was guilty of bringing a serious weapon to school and threatening people. And so he got a little time. Of course, the parents were livid. They hadn't bothered to show up. They just sent to this attorney. But the argument there was capricious. We'd given more punishment than the handbook allowed. The school had not. They had followed the high school code of conduct. And he had gotten a hold of an elementary code of conduct. So that's what we're talking about here. That's what this case is about. All right. Did all of you write out your response to this case? Answer the questions? All right, so anybody have anything special that they'd like to share in terms of case study 1? All right. Let me move that. All right, so what should the principal's course of action be? So we're all in agreement. Anybody have anything different than what I said, that we need to call the teacher in and have her recalculate the grade based on the most that all of the class assignments for the year could count was 10%, and if there were 10 assignments, that's one of them. He gets a 0 on that, and then whatever the others are, that's the 10% that's factored into his grade. And what's his grade now? And to remind her of the district grading policy, and that it appeared that she had done this intentionally. Would you put this teacher on an action plan, or refer her employee assistance for help? Obviously, she has done something wrong here, illegal, and did it intentionally. What action would you take against the teacher? Remember, we're looking at, again, due process, substantive, procedural, standards of arbitrary and capricious. What would you do? What would you do about the teacher? Anything? Tell her to do better next time? Don't let me catch you doing this again. Would you have questions about how she runs her classroom?
Could you not get rid of her pretty immediately for
Absolutely, you could.
interfering or manipulating grades? I mean,
Absolutely.
I let go all the time for that.
Absolutely. That's why I said, what's the range that for you?
Well,
What is your threshold as a principal?
Here are my questions. Was her grading policy sent out to students and parents at the beginning of the year in her syllabus? Was that published? And did she stick with it, or did she deviate from it?
She had to deviate from it. Everybody has to send out their syllabus with their grading policy, and the grading policy cannot contradict that of the school district. And
but
so,
did it anyway, and no one caught it before now, or?
Oh, it would be caught before now.
Okay.
But you can't supersede the one of the district, even if you published one that was wrong. You can't do that.
Well, that was my question. If she had put out an incorrect grading policy and had used it all year, would she then go back and change every student's grade?
Well, that's why I said we'd
For
have to
better or
review
worse?
that. There's no way that she could have published this and nobody caught it along the way.
Okay.
She obviously just changed it and manipulated it, and she might have been operating all year under her revised plan that did not go with the district's plan that has to follow. Again, it has to go state law, federal law, state law, local board policy, and then at the local school level, it has to go in that order. And local board policy can't supersede state policy. State says 10%. So local board policy is 10%.
Mhm.
School policy has to be 10%.
Right.
Teachers cannot operate and their syllabus when they turn it in, and those things are checked. Just
Mhm.
like these classes, mine are checked. We check them in high schools all the time. The issue here is not that she filed this and this is a bootleg. She might have been doing this, but this was not her advertised policy. So I said this is intentional.
Then I think, to me, she has to go pretty immediately, and then the school has to deal with communicating with parents and changing students' grades to match the policy, and then deal with the backlash that may come with that, because kids' grades could drop. You know, I don't think
exactly
you guys
right.
get complaining if grades go up, but kids' grades could drop under her policy versus
Yeah.
board policy, and then the school's going to have to deal with that, and the district's going to have to deal with that. So
Yeah, it gets pretty ugly on grade changes and all these things. I got an email today from William Sanders. William's one of our 603 students at Clayton High School in Johnston County, just on the other side of Raleigh. And he said, have you ever heard of a principal getting reinstated that was moved? And I said, yeah, in this case, because I know what happened. So the high school principal at Clayton High School got removed by the superintendent. Boom, just that fast.
mhm.
And they thought he would go quietly into the night because he had broken the law. But the superintendent didn't afford him due process. And so as soon as the superintendent met with the school board fired him. He resigned that night. They appointed an interim. They got Jim Cosby. Jim's been around forever, been superintendent, school board association. They got Jim to come out of retirement. He reinstated the principal, but put him on a action plan and on probation because the principal had been manipulating grades in high school, and 17 students were given a diploma who didn't earn one. Now, why do you think the superintendent moved that principal and didn't give him due process? Because he didn't want it to come out and have to go back and recalculate all those grades and redress and all for summer school and all the stuff that they're going to have to do now to fix that problem in Johnston County. So the superintendent said, oh, he broke the law. I'll move him, demote him and move him, but he won't say anything because he knew, no, you can't, two wrongs don't make a right. But you're right, it's going to be a mess. But that's what you have to do. That superintendent did not want to open that can of worms, that media scrutiny, that backlash from parents over their kids getting a diploma they didn't earn and other questions. And so his solution was, I'll just move the principal quiet and nobody will be the wiser except the principal filed a grievance that very day. Now, there's no discussion. The principal did the bad thing. He should have done due process, filed charges, and moved to dismiss him, but he would have had to made it public. So what he tried to do was be underhanded, and so the media wouldn't find out and folks wouldn't know. He didn't want the backlash that would come to him as superintendent, and so he violated the rights of the principal. So the principal gets his job back with stipulations that he's on an action plan and probation. I suspect he won't survive that, but I don't know. But they had to give him his job back. But the whole idea was trying to avoid a grade scandal. Now they're in the middle of one and got all these other issues as well. So you two wrongs don't make a right. You just compound your problems. Aaron is exactly right. You got to face this one head on. You got a lot of fence mending to do with parents, and there may be some bad news for some kids. This teacher may have been counting counting class assignments 60%, kids that should have failed, but because of their other test scores. See, it cuts both ways. She was using this to punish Bobby. Kids that she liked, she very well could have been counting class assignments 60% for them when they didn't earn those grades. But you're gonna have to. This is one of those you're gonna have to go and do it right. But for me, the teacher's got to go. I mean, this teacher intentionally tried to harm a child. Intentionally. There's no doubt about that.
So will Bobby's expulsion be revoked as well?
Pardon?
Will Bobby's expulsion be revoked as well?
Oh God, yeah. Oh God, oh yeah. I mean, Bobby was only expelled based on failing for the year is an expulsion.
Mhm.
And the reason why he failed for the year was not legitimate. I mean, Bobby failed for the year because his grade was manipulated, not because he didn't pass. It was because his grade was manipulated. So,
It then makes me wonder how many other students she may have done this to, not to this extreme where they flunked or didn't make it, but like little odds and ends. It then puts so many questions in the back of your mind. Like, if you did this for this one student, how many students didn't have a parent to speak up for them and be their voice, and they had to take a class over or have gotten a failing grade?
that's correct. See, that's what would be my biggest concern.
Mm.
You know, have you done this before? Have you done it to the unempowered who didn't have anybody to advocate for them?
And didn't get caught, so you felt like it was okay.
Mm-hmm. Yes. That's always my concern. Is now, I have this. I told you the story about asking the man if he wore a chicken suit before I hired him. Make sure he wasn't one of those crazies out at the hockey game because our parents and our school worked there and we knew who and what those people were. Well, I have, I have this notion, and I've always had this, and that school people have got to be a little bit better got to be a lot better than the general public, that we're held to a higher standard whether we want to be or not. But there are certain things that are deal breakers for me in terms of hiring people, because if you do that, what wouldn't you do? I mean, I understand divorce. I don't believe in it. I understand it. Sometimes things go bad, and so I don't hold it against people who get divorced. But people who run around on their spouses and become a public spectacle, if you would cheat on your spouse, would you have any problem doing bad things to me as your employee? I'll just use that one as an example. All right. We've got a bad signal tonight, but and I came home to get a decent signal. I worry about if you would lie, cheat, and steal on the one person in the world you're supposed to love, would you have any problem doing that to me as your employee? Would you have problem treating students badly or being dishonest? I know that's probably old school, and I freely admit I'm an old man, and when my wife says you drive like an old man, I just say that's because I am. But there are certain things that I believe that go to your character as an employee. If you would do this kind of thing, I don't believe that this would be the only thing that I might have questions about your character on. And if I can't trust you as a teacher to treat children honestly, fairly, with respect and dignity and love, I really don't need you in the building. I need to get me somebody else. Goes back to that. Kids don't care what you know. they just need to know you care kind of thing. You know, that's that first piece. And so what, to kind of wrap our case study up tonight, that's why I have you look at the ethical concern. So let's look at the ethics. We understand the legal piece of this. Y'all are all smart people. Y'all understand that piece of it. Let me go back and do a share here. Right here, the role of the principle of ethics. I closed the other one, I believe, or it got closed in one of these in and out sessions here. Let's see if I can get this one to pop back up. Here it comes. And so when we look at our ethical concerns, these are for everybody. Right here. Teachers need to be really strong in the ethic of care, because that's the business that we're in. Loyalty and trust, concern and connection, nurtured and encouraged versus achievement, relationships, collaboration, shared decision-making, connection. And it's not just for us as administrators. This is the ethical paradigms for schools, but it's for teachers as well. And, you know, you've got the paradigm of justice, but this one really comes down to me is what kind of people do you want working with your kids? As you as the school leader, what kind of people do you want in your building? We've all worked with those people that really didn't like kids. Is that who you want in your building? See, this manipulation of the grades, we can fix that. It might be a little public relations nightmare. But the bigger issue is what kind of person is that? Who do we want? What do we want from the people who work with the children in our? And so as we work through our ethical paradigm, justice, no, the teacher failed on the standard of justice, failed on the standard of care, failed on corrupted morals, and failed on profession. The teacher failed on all these accounts. And back to Aaron's point, if they struck out on all four, they got to go for me. You know, the one that I, you know, again, if I find you lacking in all four of these, really can't, I really don't need you in the building. And you absolutely could dismiss this teacher for this behavior. Absolutely. Absolutely. This teacher broke the law. This teacher broke the law. This teacher could go today. I had somebody tell me, well, it's a union state. You'd do different if you were in a union state. No, I wouldn't. The law is the same in all states. This is not about I like or dislike or about performance. This is about you break the law, you go home. And no court in the land would overturn your decision to fire this teacher who manipulated and broke the law and failing this kid. Would not happen. Now that would be me. This would be New Ox time. I'd have to have me a New Ox here. Your thoughts? Hurry up now. Our signal's weak. I'm going to try to get off here just in a minute. What are your thoughts on this case? Summarize reflect for me. What'd you learn?
Well, I'm going to admit, I read the case study wrong. When I read the case study, so I'm going to say this first. When I read the case study, I actually looked at it as the teacher just failing the student on that assignment. So I misread the entire case study thinking that. So now when I reread it in our discussions, I would have had to let this teacher go just because I could not have somebody that does not have the integrity to do what's right. And I would have a hard time having that person in the school as a role model for others when I know she can't do what she needs to do just in a classroom.
Absolutely.
And I think that goes to, I'm sure her peers would kind of start finding out about it, and then you never know what that will trickle out to as it affects your culture within your school and then others' decision making. So I think you got to go ahead and stand by the law and get rid of that teacher, not only for the student's sake, but also for this the morale and the culture within your school.
The culture of your school. What are we here for? Are we here for ourselves? Is this an employment agency, or are we here for kids? Do we take our professional responsibility seriously? Do we operate this facility for the convenience of the adults, or do we operate this facility for the purpose of educating kids? Sounds simple, but there's a big distinction. And it's not a distinction without difference. There is a difference in how those kinds of places are run. Steve Laws and I were talking last week. You know, we talked about the situation in Gaston County with the assistant principal. That used to be a part of high schools everywhere, but it was males and females. That used to be one of the perks of working in high schools, was having sex with high school girls, especially the cheerleaders, especially for the coaches. Let's just be honest. That used to be one of the things that we did. Wasn't right, still isn't right. But hopefully, and there was places that were run that way, and then there were other places that weren't run that way. Thankfully for me, I got inducted into, when I became a high school teacher, I worked at the best high school in the district where that was not tolerated. That would have never been tolerated. There was another high school in the district, it was rampant. Marriages lost, teen pregnancies, and I mean, it was just that, but that was their culture. And you kind of, if you were that kind of person, you drifted down there, and that's where you went to that high school to work. And it became that obvious. It became that obvious that if you were above board and a quality person, you worked at that one. If you wanted to go, shenanigans all the time, that's where you went. My wife's college roommate lost her marriage over that. Her husband was there. I mean, but it used to be a lot more prevalent than it is now, or maybe the knowledge of it. And people did not take it as seriously as we do today. But culture follows you, folks. And that culture attracts more people like that. And that's the danger that you run. I believe you got to let this person go. I believe your people won't have much faith in you as a leader. I mean, what is your threshold? If you allow this, where's your line in the sand? I mean, what is it? If this isn't above the threshold for you, if this is not unacceptable to you, what would it take? That's what this case is about. It's about this is a straight due process case where kids' rights were violated, but they were done so intentionally. So it speaks to the bigger issue of the critique of the 4 paradigms of ethics. This person broke the law, but the ethical piece was not there either. If they strike out on the law piece and all 4 paradigms of ethics, they got to go. It's just that simple. Hate it, but it's true. Anybody have anything for the good of the group?
I kind of have something that I thought might be interesting, especially after our class meeting. Something I had to deal with over the weekend. Y'all know I have a freshman in high school in the district where I teach. I used to teach at this high school until now I'm in my 2nd year at the middle school. Well, we were away this weekend, and 9 o'clock at night, kind of snuggled in for the night and enjoying our time away. And my 9th grader comes downstairs from the house we were staying in and shows me this. I don't know if you guys can see this.
A gun. I see a scope.
It says, can y'all read it?
Don't come to school on Monday. Testing out my new setup.
So one of his friends had just seen that on Instagram and had sent it to him. My guess is knowing that I could get in contact with the right people.
Yes.
So that was my Saturday night, dealing with forwarding that to the right principals and contacting law enforcement. And that wrapped up about midnight Saturday night. So,
And what did the school do in response?
well, they sent this email. Let me read this to you. This was sent on Sunday. They did, my son's friends knew who the person was that posted it. So we were able to pass that along to law enforcement, and they went straight to his house, found out another person was involved. So it really was wrapped up quite quickly. Here's the message that was sent out by the principal on Sunday. He said, "Last night, our administration became aware of a possible threat made on social media towards our school. We immediately reported the post to law enforcement, who began an investigation. The persons responsible for the post have been identified, and there is currently no credible threat to our school. Those involved in this incident will face district disciplinary actions as well as possible criminal charges. We want to thank the student who reported this post and our law enforcement agencies for their quick action in identifying those responsible. I want to assure you there is no current threat to our school, and we will continue to be vigilant with any such incidents as these." So,
Where did the picture come from? Do you know?
it was Instagram, and I have an Instagram account, so I was able to look it up and see it, and reported it to Instagram, who instantly took it down.
Yeah.
And then when I contacted the police, I said, "Well, I reported it, so it's not there anymore, but I do have the screenshot of it." He's like, "Don't worry about it. We can get anything we want from Instagram, whether it's been
Yep.
taken down or not." So.
Police are ready to help you with cases like this and cyberbullying. I mean, they know this is their purview. Now, when they went, was that picture taken at that kid's house? Did they really have that gun at the house, or was they just capture that off the internet somewhere?
I don't know. Just because I have connections to looking up the student in Power School, I do know that his father is employed in like an investigator in the police department kind of thing. So it led me to believe it could have been something he has at his house.
Mm.
So I guess they went to his house, and he immediately fessed up and told who else was involved, and so
Mm-hmm.
both people are being taken care of. But I work with the principals. The principal's wife is assistant principal at my school. So I spoke with her, and I said, "So are they out of school for the rest of the year? What's the deal?" She's like, "Well, they're out of school today." So I don't know what that means.
Should be a 10-day suspension and exclusion hearing. Kids like that, you usually place them in an alternative placement. Does your district have one?
Yeah, they have one at that school.
Should be there.
Yeah. So I don't know what the outcome's going to be, but
Well, it you know, for that, a credible threat like that, 10-day suspension and probably a little time in the alternative school.
okay.
About 6 weeks, about 30 days, something like that. That you normally wouldn't exclude a child unless they brought the actual gun to school.
Okay.
That's kind of the range
Mm-hmm.
that you would expect to do with something like that.
I'm
But your
proud of
hand
you.
will cover it.
I'm proud of your son for stepping up and even showing, sometimes they're like,
Absolutely.
"Oh, he's just playing. He won't do that." So that takes a lot of
don't
courage
know.
too. You
Mhm.
never know. So that was,
Yeah.
That's
you're raising
true.
them right.
There you go.
Well,
But-
his
but-
friend sent it to him. Well, they were on a group chat so there were 7 kids all together on the chat, and she sent it out and said, "Hey, I just saw this on Instagram." And so he brought it right downstairs. He's like, "Mom, you need to see this."
Yeah. Think about, see, this is perfect. Thank you for bringing this up, Aaron. See, this is perfect for us. See, we only look at it from our side of the desk, from the school side, the administration side. See, Aaron got to see it from the parent side. Now, I'll bet you when somebody comes in and makes a report in Aaron's school now, and she remembers how she felt as a parent when, the bottom of her stomach fell out.
Mm-hmm.
She will understand. I can't hide behind, well, I don't know where this happened, or I don't know if it's credible or not, or I'm not sure they sent this from the school's computer, any of that cop out. I'm quite sure that you now understand why I harp on you all the time. You've got to call the police.
Right.
It doesn't matter. Don't cop out. Oh, I don't know where it happened, or it didn't happen here. Did they send it during school hours? No. You follow through. You're the perfect example now of the parent that's on the other side that's afraid for their child's safety. And we can't lose that compassion. We have to do the right thing. So this is a perfect example. See, we're talking about people's lives here, and we're talking about trust from the public. You've got to follow through as school administrators.
I will say the very first thing I did after our discussion was I went on to the account and I made sure it was local. So I went through his followers and I went through the kids he follows, and I'm like, I know that kid, I know that kid, I know that kid, I know that kid. So I knew it was localized to Fort Mill High School, and it wasn't some picture
Just
from somewhere
some
else.
screen grab off the internet somewhere.
Because I didn't want to be that mom that reported something that was way off base.
But you know now, this is serious business. When you get these reports in school, this notion, well, I don't want to have to deal with that, or that'll bring negative publicity. There's nothing brings more negative publicity than getting your kids shot at school.
Yeah.
I can tell you that.
Well, and I know that dealing with that at 9 o'clock on Saturday night when all I wanted to do was snuggle up in front of the fire.
I know. I understand.
So.
But we're talking about people's lives here. You can't assume nowadays that it won't become a tragedy.
Yeah.
You just can't make that assumption. All right. My time is up. I kept you at an hour. I told you I would. I appreciate your time tonight. I'll see you again in 2 weeks at the break. Work on your activities, and we've already talked about the OMA, so continue on with that. I'm looking forward to some of your posts in terms of your task one of the OMA, so don't forget that as well. I appreciate your time and attention. I'll see you in 2 weeks.
All right. See you guys.